everybody, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be discussing an article titled Impact of Aluminum Chloride on Brain Function, a review of neurotoxic mechanisms and implications for Alzheimer's disease. This was written in the journal TIPS, or also known as Trends in Pharmaceutical Science, published in 2024. The authors are as follows, and this is basically a meta-analysis study whereby they looked at a bunch of studies and looked at the major theme, which is aluminum chloride, and what these studies are basically saying about aluminum chloride. And the databases that they looked through are Google Scholar, PubMed, Springer, Science Direct, Wiley, Scopus, and ResearchGate. About 59 studies were looked at, and the main takeaway from these abstract, the last sentence of this abstract basically states that this review emphasizes the need for further research into aluminum chloride's neurotoxic mechanisms to clarify its role in Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases. Enhanced understanding may help develop preventative measures and regulations to mitigate the health risks posed by aluminum exposure in daily life. What is that saying? Aluminum is not the end-all be-all to Alzheimer's disease, but it could be a piece to a larger puzzle. Today, though, we are going to be diving deep into the most important tools neuroscientists use to study Alzheimer's disease, and that's aluminum chloride. What exactly does this compound do to the brain, and why does it create changes that look remarkably like Alzheimer's? We're going to explore the science starting right now. Let's begin. Aluminum chloride versus the brain. So what is aluminum chloride? First and foremost, you need to know that aluminum chloride is kind of around the societal lumen that we live in. For example, it's found in water treatments, paper manufacturing, fire retardants, fillers, food additives, colorants, and medicines. And common dietary sources include bread, cakes, sweet pastries, candied fruits, dairy products, sausages, baking powder, cocoa products, cocoa itself, herbs, tea leaves, as well as spices. So what are the implications of this for Alzheimer's disease? First and foremost, this is widely used to mimic Alzheimer's disease within rats, whereby if you give them aluminum chloride, they tend to exhibit the symptoms that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. So it kind of becomes a good tool to kind of test treatments for Alzheimer's disease. So that's why they use this for rats. So you can already see that since it's already a part of our societal makeup, it's possible that this could be a reason why there is a lot of I guess you could say spontaneous Alzheimer's disease cases that arise. But we'll dive deeper into what that means more. So, neurotoxicity. What does it do? Aluminum chloride harms the brain through multiple destructive pathways. These include oxidative stress, neuroinflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, amyloid plaque formation, tau protein damage, and neurotransmitter disruption. These aren't random. They mirror the core biological problems seen in Alzheimer's disease, right? So let's talk about oxidative stress. Think of it as the brain rusting out. Aluminum chloride dramatically increases reactive oxygen species, or ROS. These unstable molecules attack DNA, proteins, and the delicate membranes of neurons. Over time, neurons become fragile and start dying off. Rust slowly eating away at a bicycle. Think of it like that. The damage builds gradually but becomes devastating as time goes on. Next, we have neuroinflammation. The brain immune cells called microglia become hyperactivated. They release a flood of inflammatory molecules trying to protect the brain, but they end up damaging healthy neurons in the process. So basically think of it as firefighters coming in to shut off a small fire with a bunch of water. What is going to be the problem is not the fire itself, but the water damage that comes after, whereby you kind of mess up the furniture, you mess up the appliances, you mess up the walls of the house. So repair is going to be expensive, and even when the repair is done, the things are not going to be the same as they were before. So it could be compromised in that way. Sometimes it's not always good to have an overactive immune system, basically. The next is mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are the powerhouse of our cells, right? Aluminum chloride exposure produces less ATP. the energy currency neurons desperately need. This energy crisis makes neurons even more vulnerable to oxidative stress, creating a vicious cycle. Imagine an entire city's power station slowly shutting down. Everything starts to fail, right? You're not going to be able to move around properly. You won't be able to get to work. You won't be able to go to sleep. You won't be able to charge your phone. Things kind of just slow down, basically, because it's you kind of need the power stations to keep everything, in a society running properly. Right. The next thing is amyloid plaque formation. The most important thing in Alzheimer's disease is amyloid plaques. Aluminum chloride promotes the buildup of beta amyloid proteins between neurons. The brain's clearance systems get overwhelmed, so these sticky proteins accumulate, disrupting communication between brain cells. So, if you have junk and scrap metal kind of stuck on a rail track, the train is not going to move. It's not going to be able to pass on the goods and essentials that might be needed from one city to another city. Therefore, that all that stuff is just stuck there, and you have to wait for crews to come and clear it out so that it can be passed on. And by that stage, you don't know how long it's been before the people received what they needed. So this can also disrupt a lot of processes that are going on within the brain. And then, as always, once amyloid plaque formation starts, we always have tau protein damage. Inside neurons, tau proteins normally act like railroad tracks, helping transport nutrients and signals. Aluminum causes tau to become hyperphosphorylated, leading to neurofibrillary tangles, the common hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. So, on top of having junk and scrap metal placed on the track, imagine the track um, it becomes morphed and collapses in ways that make it impossible for the train to even get on the train track itself. Thus, things are just not going to be going anywhere. They're going to be stuck from where they're starting, and people are not going to be receiving what the essential things that they need, leading to the starvation, to poverty, to problems that come from this um, hindrance or inhibition of essential products. And we also have neurotransmitter disruption, specifically acetylcholine. So the key chemical messages get thrown off balance, and this leads to problems with memory, learning, attention, and even mood regulation. The brain's communication network begins to fail at a fundamental level. Memory and learning. So rats treated with this aluminum chloride exhibit poor maze performance, whereas their memory and learning abilities are kind of hindered. They perform poorly in maze tests, struggle to learn new tasks, and display significant memory impairment. These cognitive changes closely resemble the memory loss or confusion seen in humans with Alzheimer's disease. So, why do the researchers use these models, these animal models? Well, as I explained earlier, it's important to study these things in mice so that we can kind of come up with better therapies and ideas as to how this mechanism works within human beings. Although it's not an end all be all, like I said earlier, because rats and humans are fundamentally different. So, understanding the dosage and the the amount of time it might take for these things to happen is also very important. But nevertheless, it is a powerful research tool for investigating Alzheimer's like brain changes. So what do we know versus what do we don't know, right? Important clarification: we know aluminum chloride is neurotoxic and reliably produces Alzheimer's like pathology in animal models. What we don't know is whether typical everyday human exposure to aluminum causes Alzheimer's disease, or exactly how much exposure would be risky. This remains an active area of research. It's important to note that this researchers found that the ones who were affected the most were the youngest mice, and as the dosages increased, the more damage there was, obviously, right? So it's kind of important to understand how much dosage there is and how early the dosage was given to the person. And also, there were some research studies that I looked into that found that certain silicon containing drinks cause the body to kind of excrete the extra aluminum that it might have. such things as these studies usually looked at people who drank silicon rich water as opposed to those who didn't. And they found that those who drank the most the ones who drank the most silicon rich waters were more likely to secrete the aluminum out of their urine, essentially. So it's one area, but it didn't really mean that people who had aluminum exposure and had Alzheimer's disease got treated from it, because those who had Alzheimer's disease continue to have Alzheimer's disease, and those who were progressing badly in that disease also continue to progress badly in that disease. So it's not a cure either, but it's just something interesting that I wanted to add. But all in all, we know that Alzheimer's is a multifactorial thing, and it is that a lot of things will cause it, right? Aging, genetics, chronic inflammation, environmental factors, a lot of things play roles. So aluminum may be one piece of the much larger puzzle, not the whole story though. Right. But the key takeaway is this: aluminum chloride activates the same major biological pathways seen in Alzheimer's: oxidative stress, neuroinflammation, amyloid buildup, tau tangles, and memory impairment. The model gives scientists a reliable way to study the disease and test treatments that could one day help millions of people. But if you found this helpful, guys, please go ahead and like and subscribe and comment on the video. See what I can do to make this thing make this a little bit more interesting, a little bit more interactive. And then again, thanks again for viewing, and hope you have a good day.